So how about you, televangelist? Sunday, all right? It felt so weird. Just that whole televangelist vibe, staring into the camera, looking into the audience. Hey, you out there in TV land. Oh man, it felt so weird on Sunday, preaching again to an absolutely empty auditorium, recognizing that your people are somehow very barely hanging on. It was a strange time, as we who had never ever imagined we'd ever be a televangelist, here we are being the televangelist. And there's all that pressure, like I talked about last time when we were dealing with the recognition piece, that we're always feeling so inadequate. Because who of us ever imagined we'd have to have a televangelist personality to somehow capture the imagination of people? There's no captive audience, so you can't. There's no even peer pressure guilt for them to pay attention. They don't have to pay attention at all, and you don't know if they are or not. Maybe that's freedom to some of us, I'm not sure, but what a weird time. This whole imposed Corona-cation thing that we're on is just a strange time. And I'm telling you, like never before is ministry more unique and more dangerous than right now. If there's ever a time when the stress is going to reveal weak spots or cracks or anything inside of us that in our soul in particular, our mind, our emotions, that can be vulnerable, it's going to be now. It's going to be now. So it's critical we do those three things of recognition, which we talked about in the last video, of prevention, which we're going to talk about in this video, and then finally, intervention. During this season, this crazy Corona season of ministry, it can take years off our life. This pick is even more dramatic in these times. Check out this little slide. Yeah, you get it. You feel it. You know what I'm talking about. And I'd say right now, the stress of ministry is accelerating the weathering process of ministers. We're looking more like year 15 every day. It's accelerating. It's like months are going by when days are going by. This is why it's more important than ever to have a soul health routine. It's critical. What's your routine? What's your soul health routine? And don't give me that, I have a little daily devotion. I do my daily bread. Or I tune in and let somebody else do it for me while I listen. Or I'm distracted with 6 other things. No. No, that's not good. Most ministers have worked so hard to gain the whole world of ministry that over that time, we have lost touch with our own souls. This isn't a result of immoral behavior. We're not out of touch with our souls because we're immoral. We're not out of touch with our souls because we're indifferent. We're out of touch with our souls because we have been delivering so much soul output and very little soul input. Let me say that again. The minister's soul fatigue is a result of tremendous year after year after year of constant soul output and very little soul input. Listen to this. Recently, Pastor Howard John Wesley of the historic 10,000 member Alfred Street Baptist Church in Alexandria, Virginia, announced that he was stepping away from ministry because he feels far from God and his soul is deeply tired. He warned pastors who are attempting to pour out of an empty cup the following. Listen carefully. One of the greatest mistakes of pastoring is to think that because you work for God, you're close to God. I need to say that one more time. The pastor said this, who was stepping away from ministry because he could no longer pour out of an empty cup. He's tired of doing that. He is tired in soul. This is what he said. One of the greatest mistakes of pastoring is to think that because you as a pastor work for God, that somehow you're close to God. Yes, ministers seeking to gain the whole world of church growth are losing their soul health in the process. And what about the minister's spouse? Very, very little, if anything, is ever talked about regarding the minister's spouse. Recently, Sam Chan, Christian leadership expert, mentioned in a conference that I was attending that the pastor's spouse, the minister's spouse, is the most lonely person on the planet. That is a significant statement. The 24/7 marginlessness of ministry and the weight of eternity that's bearing down on the minister and the minister's spouse is often ignored until it's time for serious intervention. Listen to some of this information. You know this because you feel it. You don't need me to give you empirical evidence because you already know it for yourself. But just to validate the point, here's the deal. According to the Institute of Religious Studies, longevity of a clergy career is rapidly declining. Next, rates of suicide, divorce, alcoholism, depression, heart attack, and other stress-related maladies are all significantly higher today in ministry than 20 years ago in ministry. According to the Journal of Religious Health, significantly elevated levels of burnout among clergy have been recorded over the last 10 years. In 2017, the Clergy Burnout Survey, yes, there is one because there needs to be one, found that 65% of clergy surveyed were bordering on burnout or in full burnout mode, not to mention their spouses, whose percentages were even higher. No local church minister ever gets out of the ministry because they can't figure out how to put together a sermon, or they can't manage building a worship service and executing a worship service. Nobody ever gets out of ministry because they just couldn't figure out how to make a hospital visit or conduct a wedding or a funeral. Ministers get out of the local church ministry because they are simply exhausted with the perpetual demand of ministry. It is unique, it is dangerous, it is unlike any other vocation on the planet, and that's what contributes to people getting out of ministry. Now, they may just change jobs within ministry, they're still getting out of the local ministry because of exhaustion. They may exit through ministry job change. They may exit altogether, or even worse, they may exit through marital, moral, or mental breakdown. This is why ministers get out of the local church ministry. Sadly, according to the research, the majority of ministers, and indeed even more minister spouses, are in need of intervention. Not just prevention, but intervention. And don't you delude yourself for a second, Pastor, that with regard to the lie that so much has been perpetuated in our context. Do not delude yourself any longer, Pastor, that somehow if you break the next church growth barrier, if you just get beyond the 200 barrier, if you just make it past the 800 barrier, everything will be fine and things will become much easier. If that's what you're thinking, you're already in need of intervention because you are deluded. But right now, before we address interventions for those 65 or more percent of us on the verge or in full-blown burnout, I want to address prevention. Prevention. More than ever, a healthy soul routine is critical for the minister and his family. And what better time than right now on Corona-cation is there better to develop a serious soul health plan? What is your soul health routine? Traditional devotions as we know it are not near robust enough in order to be able to support the demands of ministry. We've got to draw from the best ancient spiritual formation practices in the best of contemporary formats. Here are a few prevention practices for the minister and the family. Let's take a walk through some of these renewal zones for an ancient future life. Now, renewal zone number 1, a daily distraction. These are things like picking an activity or an experience that you're determining to do on a daily basis that will give you a little relief, a little distraction, if you will, from the pressures and stresses of life, whatever it might be. It could be exercising in the morning. You see the elements on the screen. It could be engagement of nature. It could be coming home and wrestling with your kids. It could be something along those lines. These renewal zones are essential. So as we're working through them, through these renewal zones, first, daily distraction. Build upon these to recognize that you don't just need one of them, you need all of them. First renewal zone, daily distraction. Second renewal zone, weekly diversion. This is when we have a consistent activity or experience that diverts you away from the stressors of ministry. A weekly diversion is critical. Mine happens to be on Thursday evenings. I'll go and play soccer with a bunch of old guys like me, and we'll get together and bang around on the field and have a fabulous time. It's a great way to release testosterone, being a part of something like that. A group of guys, none of them go to my church. Hallelujah. If I happen to win some of them to the Lord, I'd probably send them to other churches so that I don't have to be around that. It's my safe space with non-church people. It's very helpful. So number 1, a daily distraction. Number 2, a weekly diversion. Number 3, a quarterly disconnect. This is where you plan an extended Sabbath, if you will. You'll take 3 days or so, and you'll go away for a long weekend or an extended period of time during the week where you can get some rest and rejuvenation. So I'm encouraging you on this quarterly disconnect, a daily distraction, a weekly diversion, and a quarterly disconnect, so that you will build these rhythms into your life of renewal zones. These may be things like taking a trip to a historic site, might be going to the beach, it could be camping, anything that's an extended period of time that will renew your soul. Let's take a look at the 4th, annual abandonment. When I say that, I mean exactly what it sounds like. It's a time when you completely disconnect and abandon yourself to not worrying about church. This is so critical because having this extended time, I mean, not just a quarterly disconnect, but an annual abandonment where you truly retreat and you become insulated and protected from all of the stress, and you spend anywhere from 7 to 10 days or so just abandoning any pastoral responsibility. That is critical. I also want to point your attention to the next renewal zone, which is Sabbath. I've created a little system for our church and for myself that relates to the 5 S's of Sabbath. And that would be supply, stop, settle, savor, and synchronize. Supply, stop, settle, savor, and synchronize. As you engage these 5 things related to your Sabbath, then you will have a rich weekly experience of Sabbath. Now, when I talk about a weekly diversion, I'm not talking about that. That's not your Sabbath. When I'm talking about a quarterly disconnect, that's not your weekly Sabbath. An annual abandonment, that's not your weekly Sabbath. I'm talking about the 4th commandment. I'm talking about no longer living in sin. I'm talking about honoring the 4th commandment and keeping the Sabbath holy, sacred, separate, so that you even work like say my Sabbath is from Thursday sundown to Friday sundown. That's my Sabbath. So beginning on Thursday afternoon, my wife and I will supply our Sabbath. We'll make sure that all of what we need for food and for activities or any of those things, it's all done so that when we engage that Sabbath, starting sundown Thursday night till sundown Friday night, we will be free. Like I said, Thursday night's my weekly distraction, meaning I get to go play soccer, and then the rest of that day, the rest of that Sabbath is spent truly resting. Whatever is restorative, whatever is restful, whatever that means to you, engage it on the Sabbath. Disconnect from all your social contact, for your technological, digital contact, if you will, and just be free. I tell my church, when it comes Thursday sundown, you won't be getting me on the phone. If there's an emergency, somebody, some elder, some staff person, they'll get in touch with me and they'll make sure I know if it's a serious emergency. But this renewal zone of Sabbath is critical. Now, finally, I want to talk about this renewal zone of a 5-year sabbatical. Now, if your denomination allows you an opportunity for a sabbatical like mine does, like our denomination that I'm a part of, gives me a sabbatical every 5 years. I can take 30 days every 5 years. This is my point. If you're not keeping a weekly Sabbath, waiting 5 years to have a 30-day Sabbath, that's not going to be a restorative event. That's going to be a rescue event. You're going to need to be rescued. You won't be getting any restoring going on there. You'll be having to have rescue operations done in your life. So what good's a sabbatical if you're not keeping a Sabbath? The only good a sabbatical is if you've consistently kept Sabbath all along the way, so that when you go on your sabbatical, and by the way, I don't think 30 days is near enough. I think it should be at least 3 months every 5 years, that you engage in that process and it becomes a restorative effort. You see the elements on the screen. You can read them yourself and go back to this video and connect and get more information and review these things as we go. But what I want to do right now is I want to move on from renewal zones, and I want to mention something from Dallas Willard. Dallas used to say, if we aim at nothing, we'll be sure to hit it. If we aim at nothing, we'll be sure to hit it. What are you aiming at with your soul? What are you aiming your soul at? It can't be church growth. It can't be church growth. If you aim your soul towards church growth, you'll end up with a worldly high, perhaps, or a great worldly discouragement. But that will never suffice for the pastoral ministry. It's got to be Christ-likeness. That's the only aim of our soul. It's the only goal that God has ever or had ever or will ever give us or our people, to aim at Christ-likeness with the bow of soul health. And in the quiver of soul health, you pull out the arrows of these renewal zones and add to that all of the other disciplines I talk about on ministryoasis.com, all the other opportunities that we discuss on ministryoasis.com for soul renewal. Those are the arrows that you put in the bow of your soul health rhythm so that you can aim at Christ likeness, because the reality is a healthy pastor makes a healthy church. A healthy father makes a healthy family. And that's exactly what we're describing here. Another of the many preventative suggestions that I offer on ministryoasis.com is also developing a soul health plan. A soul health plan. Now, these renewal zones may be a part of that soul health plan, but a soul health plan is an annual experience where you engage the Lord and ask the Lord, perhaps while you're on your annual abandonment, and you ask the Lord, what does the Lord want for you in the next 12 months regarding your soul? Not the soul of your church. This is not about your church. This is about you and your soul. I've personally been doing this for the last several years. I've taken my church on a process through this for the last several years in making a soul health plan. Remember, healthy pastor, healthy church. Now, if you're interested in that, if it piques your curiosity, you can always go to ministryoasis.com for a link to a fillable PDF that will guide you through the process. And there were several examples from my own soul health plans in times past, from those previous examples. So you can use them to pattern your own after, perhaps. But I want to point your attention to one particular element of the soul health plan that I absolutely am in love with this time around. One of the elements of my particular soul health plan is developing rules of life. That's a consistent aspect regarding soul health plans. A section is in there about developing rules of life. That may be an unfamiliar term to many of you from the evangelical world, but rules of life are spiritual missional statements that you're going to actually, it's actionable, if you will, that you're going to engage in and make sure they're a rule for you. You may have daily, you may have weekly, you may have monthly rules for life or an annual rule for life. They are customizable to your own soul. They're different from spiritual disciplines. They are customizable for your own soul, and they're called rules for life. Now, here's one of my personal favorite rules of life. This is it was in last year's, and it's in my current soul health plan. Daily, to ruthlessly eradicate all negative, cynical, specious, draining people, thought patterns, behaviors, and circumstances from my life. To ruthlessly eradicate all negative, cynical, specious, draining people, thought patterns, behaviors, and circumstances from my life. And let me identify for you the first person to ruthlessly eradicate from your life. It's the pew pastor. You know who I'm talking about. The pew pastor. They are one or several in your church who have never ever had the courage to step up and embrace the call of God on their life to enter into professional ministry. And so they sit in your church as pew pastors, critiquing everything you do. Now, I know some of you right now are horse laughing, saying, I have got this one, and now you're calling their names right now. They are people who will simply know that they can do a better job than you. And they're always about the business of rising up in moments of opportunity to pontificate as to how they would do it if they were the pastor. How that they would have so much better understanding, so much richer sermon, so much better problem solving. They would be able to intervene in ways that would bring much greater results. What they do would always be better than what you do. But yet they never had the courage to be able to step up and embrace the call to ministry like you did. These are people with frustrated calls to ministry on their life, and they will be your worst person to drain you and to suck the life out of your ministry. You need to ruthlessly eradicate those people from your life. Do whatever you need to do to disempower them, first from your mind and then from your ministry. What a great preventative rule of life that if you can successfully implement, this will go a long, long way to preventing ministry burnout that's always seeking a pastor to devour. Minister's spouses, ministry is the most unique and dangerous vocation on the earth. For all the reasons that I've noted here and noted on ministryoasis.com. Listen to the following wisdom from Dallas Willard as he shares with us about what it means to be a minister today.
What I would say is simply this. You're thinking about transformation and discipleship in your position as a pastor and as a leader. And one of the things that can happen when we talk about these things is we can begin to feel burdened and responsible for not doing it sooner. Perhaps we have things in our past that haven't worked out well. And I think this is where we need to understand the meaning of grace for us. The bottom line for each of us is I am a disciple, and I am here now. And to be a disciple means that I receive grace. And perhaps one of the most concrete meanings of grace is, now is the time to go on. Mercies of God are new every morning, as the song says. And I accept those. And I don't beat myself up because I haven't done things that now I think I should be doing. And just begin to implement in your own life the practice of living by grace as a disciple of Jesus. And that means looking forward. Now I begin to put into practice some of the things that I understand are available to me and that he wants me to do. I lay down the burden of success, for example, and trying to think about it in various ways that probably have come from sources in my past, and I start thinking about success as the present kingdom of God in my life now. And that means relationally. It means not just relationally to Christ himself, but to those who are around me. How am I going to live together with them now? That's the place we pick up. And once we get over the idea that grace is just limited to forgiveness and understand that grace is a power in our life, grace is God acting in our lives to accomplish what we can't accomplish on our own. And then we step forward, watching for him to act. Then grace reconstructs all of our lives, and we can pick up and go from here with confidence in a reality that we experience day by day, and that's the kingdom of God. And with that, then we can begin to change what we do, and among other things, lay down a lot of burdens we're carrying. For ministers and leaders, the burden of performance is so crushing, and they are locked into this idea of performing, often for their congregation or for whoever, and just say, I don't perform, I stand before God. He's an audience of one, and that's where I live. And then out of that, you can not perform, you minister. You minister the kingdom of God. The presence of God in your life comes out to everyone around you. Peace, rest, relaxation everywhere because of that.
Yes, performance-based ministry is crushing for you and your family. Soul health provides the infrastructure. If we assemble it correctly, if we put it together with tenacity and intentionality, soul health and a rhythm and routine of a robust nature will give us the infrastructure for the crushing weight of ministry. Remember, we are looking at the three essential elements while on this Corona-cation. It's an extraordinary time. We must attend to the following three things: recognition, prevention, and intervention. First, recognize that you are likely feeling all the normal symptoms that ministry stress that leads to burnout can bring on. Recognize you're already doing that, even before this Corona-cation. And then recognize that this Corona crisis acts like an accelerant thrown on the already burnout stressors, burning stressors in your life. This Corona-cation is like gas on the fire. It's accelerating the potential burnout. If you don't recognize that and put in preventative structures in your life, you will be in need of intervention very soon. Number one, recognition. Number two, prevention. That's the key I've been discussing here. But you can find out a lot more with resources on ministryoasis.com. Third, right now, during this time, intervention may be the best call for some of us. Check back in a couple days to see the third video that I'll be uploading here on intervention. What to do if you're already on the verge or in full-blown burnout. That's coming up very soon in the next couple days. Listen, God's got the coronavirus. He really does. God's got the coronavirus like God's got everything else. We are Romans 8:28 people. We believe and preach and teach, and now we've got to turn that back on ourselves and own the reality that yes, he is indeed working all things together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. God's got the coronavirus like he's got the whole world in his hands. God bless you. I look forward to seeing you back here in a couple days to talk about intervention. MinistryOasis.com, here for you, for that parched pastor's soul in a ministry desert. We're here for you. God bless you. Have a great day.